Hello, I'm Marcus Rees-Evans, author of California's Next Century 2.0. In this book, I discuss the history of California and its possible future. It's no secret that we are facing financial woes in this country, the likes of which we have not seen before. Californians didn't cause these problems, but Californians are surely paying the bulk of the burden. The federal financial crisis has quickly become California's financial crisis. Today, California cities cannot properly fund police and fire departments, teachers can't be paid their worth, university students and parents are forced to pay staggering tuition costs for a good education. Education we as a state must provide our children or risk having our kids struggle all of their lives. Our debt continues to rise every day, crushing our future with the heavy burden of this ever-growing obligation. Well, an extreme crisis demands a strong solution. The solution that I propose can quickly eliminate our state debt, effectively fund our police, fire, teachers, make California cities safe by proper funding for services, provide our children with affordable and worthy education from teachers who are rewarded fairly, and the ability to finally free ourselves from the devastating load of debt and live our lives free from the agony of financial distress. Californians foot about 15% of the federal budget each year, to the detriment of our own citizens. As Californians, we pay for our share of services that the federal government promises to provide, such as military defense, border security, disaster relief, and Social Security. Paying for services we receive is certainly fair and appropriate. But we don't even get what we are asked to pay for. Every year, Californians ask the federal government for appropriate funds to secure the border. Year in and year out, funds fail to come. Consequently, the state has had to divert funds to secure our border, a service paid for yet never adequately received. Immediately following the 9/11 attacks, the Director of Homeland Security rated California as the most terrorist vulnerable state to attack because of California's many seaports and airports. However, the money California needed to be protected in a new age of terrorism was never provided. Director of Homeland Security agreed that California did not get the money that it deserved, and instead the federal government wasted money on places that were not security threats. Misuse of California money went on for 5 years after 9/11. California was vulnerable to terrorist attacks at the same time that the USA made it a priority to fight terror. California truckers had to pay special taxes on cargo coming in to raise money for nuclear detectors to make sure terrorists could not sneak bombs into California. Local trucker tax then passed on to us in the form of higher costs for local goods. So California pays extra tax for national security, although it already paid federal taxes for this very reason. California is prone to earthquakes and fires. These natural disasters are called national emergencies by the federal government, but are rarely accompanied by necessary funds. California has yet to receive money for earthquakes 15 to 20 years ago. The federal government does not provide California assistance for fires, even though we are entitled to it. California does not have the resources to fight big forest fires, so we pay other states to borrow their planes and helicopters. The federal government has continuously failed to provide the services for California for which it readily collects. Interstate commerce is another area in which we would expect the federal government to protect the interests of each state fairly. But the federal government has again failed California. 2001, California experienced rolling blackouts. About 5 years later, after an official investigation, federal officials concluded that multiple Texas-based energy companies protected by the Texas government intentionally and knowingly committed price gouging, that is, artificially inflating the price, which is a felony under federal law. It took the feds years to look into this matter, which meant that for years price gouging was allowed to continue on Californians to California. No federal official has been asked to explain the lapse of this at all. And of the many Texas-based energy companies that were forced to pay penalties, only one essentially did. Of the total amount of money that California lost due to price gouging, only 1/20th will ever be paid back. However, California still has to pay off its debt and interest from the debt from the price gouging. The amount received by the lawsuit won't even pay off the debt or even the interest. The pattern is clear. We pay our federal taxes to receive our services, most of which we never get, and we end up paying with extra state taxes to cover what was supposed to be covered by the federal government. Effectively, California pays twice the amount of taxes it should for the same service. But even after the costs of these supposed services and other more general services such as Social Security are paid for, Californians still pay an additional $80 to $120 billion. I'll say that again. $80 to $120 billion every year, and have done so for 30 years. That's right, 30 years. This surplus money, earned by the sweat and creativity of Californians, is used for fat grants to upgrade infrastructure such as roads, dams, bridges, but all in other states. All the while, California is listed by the federal government as having the worst infrastructure of all of the states. This extra windfall California provides to other states is roughly equal to one entire state of California budget. That is to say, if we kept the money here, it would cover our entire state budget and pay off our debt. Being on the receiving end of such a financial abuse is nothing new for large economies, removed by distance from the main national economy. In every such case in the world where the larger national economy did not support the smaller outlying economy, it actually milked that outlying economy. Those conditions resulted in separation movements always. Historically, world examples of this include the USA and England, Normandy and Brittany to France, the Basque region to Spain, North Italy to Italy, Quebec to Canada, Iceland to Denmark, Vladivostok and Prima Yuri to Russia, Ryukyu to Japan, Julian Republic and Acre State to Brazil, California, Chiapas, and the Yucatan Peninsula to Mexico, Scotland to England, Western Australia to Australia, Rio Grande and the Kingdom of Aracuna and Patagonia to Argentina, South Sudan to Sudan, South Congo to Congo, the Sahel to Morocco, and Biafra to Nigeria. All of these areas have dealt with separation movements because they were exploited instead of supported by the national economy. California today is the only exception in the entire world, literally. California runs about $20 billion in debt. This could be wiped out if we did not subsidize the federal government's need to squander our money. We would have plenty of money to boost the state budget, to employ more teachers, police, firefighters, and to get people back to work. We could fund construction projects for new roads, bridges, schools. Things that we have no money to do now. This would create high-value jobs in the private sector and boost California out of this recession. There would be money to adequately fund higher education and programs to support kids in school so they can successfully enter and benefit from state schools and universities. Furthermore, after stabilizing and starting the economy on a growth path, Californians could permanently cut this extra federal income tax. That's right, we could permanently cut this extra federal income tax and lower taxes for all Californians substantially. Businesses would have the capital to expand and develop ideas which used to be the staple of the California economy. All of these things would propel the state out of this recession and return California to its natural place as an innovation and economic powerhouse. During California's prosperous days in the 1960s and 1970s, California made incredible strides and was a leader the world looked to as an example. It passed some of the first legislation banning discrimination in housing and employment in the country. It created a higher education system that would be world-class and almost free at the same time, when previously there was no higher education in all of California. This system would become the envy of the world and attract minds from everywhere as they heard about this California dream of affordable, high-quality university education, something most people in America and the world would never be able to afford or ever have access to. Freeways were built to connect California and make it the most heavily traveled road system, linking California's existing seaports and airports together with the urban populations of California in a way that had not been done before, with such a high level of efficiency. The water issues was addressed with the California Aqueducts Project, which provided water for California population to grow well into the future. Art, culture, innovation, beauty and entertainment, and just beauty in art in general. literally exploded on every street in every major urban area. Artists of all types came to our state to be inspired. Because the economy was rich and growing, people, including the middle class, had disposable income to spend on art and entertainment. The world's greatest libraries exist in California. No one else values libraries like California because it needs the constant source of knowledge and ideas and education to keep innovation going in this state. This attracts the world's greatest scholars to California. The greatest scientific innovations constantly pop up in California because we alone have the human capital beyond any other place and beyond the spirit of innovation, beyond any other place in their attempts to be an innovation paradigm. California has been a leader in art and science. We can lead again if we are free to do so. California holds a very special place in the world. It is the 8th largest economy in the world. And as a major player in international trade, we attract business interests the world over. But most efforts on the part of Californians to take advantage of such interests have effectively been stymied by the federal government. Governor Schwarzenegger famously voiced his frustration against this type of continued obstruction, and every California governor for the last 50 years has asked for expanded trade just for California. As I argue in my book and the goal of Californians for Sovereignty, calsov.org, the time has come to claim our rightful place in the world economy and the world community, and to stop financially crippling our citizens while carrying the load for other states, a situation that has gone on for 30 years, far too long. No, I'm not talking about secession, but that we rearrange the terms of our partnership to arrive at mutually beneficial terms that we can all profit from. We are suggesting California become subnationally sovereign. In such an arrangement, California would continue to use the US dollar, trade and business contracts won't change, the existing military would still continue to protect the state and use existing bases in California, and Californians would still continue to serve in the armed forces of America. Once independent, the California economy would begin to rise due to a new focus on international trade with new laws and an economy designed to fit international trade at the speed of California and not the stilted pace of Washington. Such an arrangement would also allow Washington the freedom to act more efficiently in the interests of the other 49 states without taking California into consideration, as the interests of the other 49 states are not always in line with the interests of California. Additionally, California, as subnationally sovereign, would be uniquely poised to fill the void being quickly left by Switzerland. Switzerland has for years prospered as the diplomatic center of the world, but the world has changed, and a European center no longer holds the appeal for a global center for the new world's powers. In the coming decades, the new superpowers, represented by the USA and EU as one entity, and Russia, China, India, Brazil, and possibly a Southeast Asian collective known as ASEAN, will demand a new negotiation nexus that represents the life and culture of all of the powers. California is the single most diverse state that can provide the same dynamic in today's world as Switzerland effectively provided when most of the world's powers were European. The next century's new powers will demand a new negotiation center. An invigorated California would quickly grow its economy, which would benefit the federal government due to our continued economic link. An independent California, free to pursue its own path, free of federal income taxes, and free from cumbersome and limiting trade and business laws, would quickly eliminate its state debt and create surpluses to pay for salaries and services that have gone neglected. California's stability and solid long-term prosperity is at hand. We now just need to claim it. Subnational sovereignty has worked between Hong Kong and China, between Scotland and England, and between America and Cuba and the Philippines historically. Now, many of you may be saying that a U.S. state cannot seek such a free agreement, that this matter of state independence was closed after the Civil War. Yes, this matter was closed for most states, but California and Hawaii hold a distinct legal exception which has been recognized by other world leaders and meets the UN criteria for such matters. After the Civil War, it was determined that states that join the Union can't then leave the Union. That is the precedent. California and Hawaii never voluntarily joined the Union. They were sovereign governments who had relationships with the U.S. government for a long time, and then the U.S. government militarily invaded these countries and took them over and forced them to join the Union. That is not the way that 48 other states joined. This is not a hypothetical argument. British legal scholars in the Guardian newspaper have noted this point for California. Even President Clinton admitted that the taking of Hawaii was wrong. California was taken in the exact same manner. The closest case in modern history that resembles how California was acquired as a state by the USA was when the USSR invaded Afghanistan in the 1970s. An act that was condemned by the US and the world community at that time, and still today. The way California joined the US is not approved by America's current foreign policy of the last 30 years and UN policy of the last 20 years. Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan were all actions by the USA to stop another force that did exactly what America did to California and Hawaii in the past. What happens when the USA has to explain its actions and hypocrisy in front of the world court, with the world watching? U.S. territories are historically based on the European legal premise of terra nullius, which allowed countries to settle uninhabited or barbarous country. Most territories in the U.S. were settled and developed, and then the inhabitants made a petition for statehood of their own free will. California, however, had an existing sovereign government that was taken over by force. This process clearly violated the established method of expanding statehood, and as such, clearly allows California to petition for a return of its sovereignty. Ambassadors of several countries have expressed a willingness to present California's case directly to the UN, based on the unique manner of how it achieved statehood status. Will the federal government put up more than a perfunctory effort to keep California in the Union? The facts seem to indicate that they will not. 2 Supreme Court justices testified in front of Congress in the last 2 years, asking that there be a separate California Supreme Court just for California. That's right. The federal Supreme Court is asking Congress for a separate California legal system because they are overloaded dealing with California issues. The federal government gave up power to California over insurance, environmental regulation, healthcare regulation before Obamacare, and now retirement planning. Other states were not giving these powers back, only California, because the federal government finds California essentially ungovernable. A recent survey of all CEOs across America in an official business report indicated that national business people hate California so much that a CEO said California should leave the Union. They printed that in that report. Forbes magazine recently released a map showing where Americans move to. Americans move to the other 49 states regularly, and most Americans do not travel to California. Forbes noted that there was a bias against traveling to California versus any other state. The Reverend Jerry Falwell was able to have a webpage on the official White House website, paid for with our tax dollars during the George W. Bush presidency. On this website, immediately following the 9/11 attacks, Falwell took some questions from people. Someone asked, would it be wrong for terrorists to sneak a nuclear bomb into California and blow it up because they were all evil? Jerry Falwell, on the official White House website, during the time of America's war on terror, said, no, that's fine, it would be totally okay. This White House webpage was not taken down. It is connected to the President of the United States, who said he wanted to fight terror, yet allowed this kind of talk. Following a recent fire when 500 homes were lost in California, Glenn Beck, a news commentator, said that a bunch of people who hate America lost their homes today. Fox News never took down this segment and showed it throughout the year. There was no protest. No one got upset. Imagine if this was said about any other state in America. What would be the reaction? Type in America hates California on any internet search engine and read the pages of responses from Americans on what they really think of us and this state. Now type in America hates and then use any other state in the Union. You literally won't find the pages and pages and pages and pages of internet postings. Why is that? California is not like the rest of the USA. It has been and remains the proverbial red-headed stepchild. How will the country react when this red-headed stepchild, proverbially, wants to leave home? I think we know. But let us not concern ourselves with how all of this is possible. Let's focus on whether, one question, if subnational sovereignty is truly in the interest of California. Let's start the dialogue. I ask you to take a closer look at this matter and join me and others at calsolve.org to start this discussion now. Thank you.